Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Investing Counterpoint. We have another great episode for you today. With all this banking crisis and everything else that's going on, we're going to take a little bit of a break and we're going to revisit the conversation around crypto, specifically Bitcoin, but all other crypto as well. And Daniel, as our resident expert of all things crypto, what are your thoughts with the way that crypto has been acting in the past couple of weeks?
Well, I hate to say I was right, but I was right.
I hate to say you were right too.
Nobody
hates it more than me.
No, I mean, obviously I'm not proven right yet, but I think that this is an event that I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for crypto to finally decouple, because the whole premise of crypto is that somehow or other it is independent of the traditional financial system, but much more importantly, monetary system, because, the independence of Bitcoin from a financial system, that is a pie in the sky. I mean, it is not independent. And we saw time and again when markets dropped, it would sell off simply because same people hold Bitcoin that hold some other stuff. They need to make margin calls or whatever. But this is the first time, I think, where the public and the markets are realizing that the fiat monetary system is seriously broken. If Bitcoin did not perform the way it did not decouple and go against the grain, that would be there would be a really big doubt whether it ever could do that. And monetary system is broken. You look everywhere. I'm not just talking about the bank collapse, but obviously, but those are more like financial credit events. But look at, for example, Fed instituting daily swap lines with all the central banks of the world. What, the weekly wasn't enough? I mean, what this is telling us, amazingly, is that there's a shortage of dollars. There is a shortage of dollars out there. So the central banks of the world need a daily swap lines, and they've been utilized to a very large degree, much more than in 2008. I think maybe 30-40% more already.
No, but I think the point, I mean, and what's made me kind of come over to your side, like a little, like that's a little more esoteric, even for people that are looking at this on a daily basis. I think it's very important. But the big in your face event with SVB collapsing, Silicon Valley Bank, the troubles at some of the other regional banks, having to be bailed out by, the large banks, that's really in your face.
I would say absorbed.
Absorbed. Yeah. Okay.
Taken over.
That still hasn't been complete. But either way, what we're seeing is I don't know if we can call it a flock to, but I mean, certainly that asset, Bitcoin in particular, you watch a lot of other ones, but the big headline one is Bitcoin going against the grain, acting like what it should. We've long had a disagreement on crypto, and my contention, while I'm not completely abandoning it, I'm coming over to your side, is that it's too volatile to be, currency, right? I mean, you can't have your currency worth $20,000 last week and $27,000, $28,000 this week. I think that's too big of a volatility, but it is acting like you want it to, independent of that financial system. So if you're looking to escape traditional banks, I've been, long had multiple banks. I think everybody should have more than one bank so that nothing like this can, freeze up your money for 4 to 6 weeks. But now people are starting to realize, well, I can have crypto and not be reliant on any bank. I'm outside the financial system and like you said, not truly outside the financial system, because these things do move.
But you are, if your horizon is long, then you are.
Yeah. And so I think that's the important takeaway from the Bitcoin. And I know it's a short time period, but this is really the only real bank collapses or any real. I mean, we've had market events and things like that, but this is this is different. This is where you want Bitcoin to act like it is. This is more like a very 2008 light. I mean, very, very light, but I mean, kind of what Bitcoin was created out of.
Yeah, over the last few years, it showed itself magnificently in the different types of crises. For example, Venezuela, obviously a country that is in deep crisis. Bitcoin is used there more than I think any country in the world. Nigeria, when the government tried to basically force everybody to use central bank digital currency, they announced the cash exchange and forgot to print the new notes accidentally. In 2 months, you take a cash-heavy economy, you try to convert it to basically bank deposits and then to the CBDC. People rebelled. Bitcoin was worth $38,000 in Nigeria if you buy it for Nigerian fiat paper money. So every time it's shown in these smaller crises, so there were a lot of these little signs that it's coming of age. But I do believe that this time because fundamentally it is a currency. It is a currency crisis in the making, not quite yet, but in the making. And people are realizing that. And now they're realizing that it's not just, one bank or the other bank. People started to understand that, hey, it's a catch-22. If the banks are not allowed to go under, then the currency is destroyed because there's 18 trillion of deposits where you can hold this money. And the really what's happening is the really people went into crypto. And I will tell you that it is even more impressive for two reasons that are not obvious. The first reason is since January, there was a so-called Operation Choke Point 2, which basically Biden administration used every tool in the book except actual laws and regulations to try to kill crypto. They put out warnings from Federal Reserve to banks to stop dealing with crypto. They, I think Whitehouse National Economic Council put out the same kind of warning that, stop using crypto. They've turned down licenses from banks that are a bit in crypto. But the two banks, so they've been trying to really hurt crypto by removing the off rails, right? Removing a way to get out of the centralized banking into crypto. I'll tell you what, it didn't work. There are too many of them and it's too resilient. And then the other thing that people don't understand or underestimate, I think that Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank are the two banks that were heavily involved in the crypto space, among other things, both of them. So the two banks that were shut down, and they failed in many ways, but they also were shut down because there's a story that was not disputed that apparently there were buyers for the Silicon Valley Bank and the Fed did not allow the purchase to go through. I think that is a story that's waiting for Seymour Hersh or somebody like that, because that is that's crazy.
It was sold though, wasn't it? Wasn't it sold for $1?
Right, but there was a buyer before the panic set in, before it was declared and shut down and declared insolvent. It was sold after that, right? It was sold afterward, after the panic. So my thought is that, hey, if Bitcoin can withstand a massive attack by U.S. government, basically trying to choke it off liquidity, and then also a second, maybe part of that operation, two big banks with ties to crypto going down, hey, it passed everything with flying colors. I will say in a minute why I think that there are more punches. Sovereign governments have a lot of tools in their toolbox, as we saw with the Fed over the years. They come up with new ones, QE, QT, repo, reverse repo, all kinds of names. But I think that they're going to do one more thing, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, which I think may have some impact. But I think in the long run, I'm as confident in Bitcoin as ever.
Yeah, I think there was even talk about which one was going to survive, which one was going to be it. You have any comment on some of the other cryptos because I took a quick look. Yeah.
Well, I think that I really don't like Ethereum. I think it's a highly centralized project. It's highly centralized, and it's already has a lot of precedence in allowing the kind of financial censorship that Bitcoin was designed to avoid. I think that it is not run as Bitcoin. But there's another reason. Ethereum premise is completely flawed. I do think it's a darling of central banks, and I think that in some ways it is the preferred choice for bankers. They would rather deal with Ethereum. That's why some of these banker projects are being built on Ethereum. But you see the premise of Ethereum, what's the premise of Ethereum? It is that it is a world's computer. You can build apps on it. You can build financial systems on it. You can create tokens on it. But you know what? That is technologically unsound. You cannot have one blockchain to serve all these needs, because blockchain is a very non-scalable or difficult to scale. In blockchains, there's always, as in any technology, actually, there's trade-off between decentralization and scalability. This is a law that governs this thing. So if Ethereum truly were a world's computer, it would not function. The transaction fees would be $100 per transaction, and we've seen that already. It happened a few times, even for mildly popular apps. So I think that Ethereum, their premise is just not valid. It cannot be the world's computer. Whereas Bitcoin, and I will talk about money now aspect of it, we have to separate different functions of money. Nobody says that in order to be money, something has to fulfill all of the criteria of money. And it's never, very rarely in history did you ever have that. It's a scale, first of all, it's a continuum. The something could be more or less like money in a certain criteria, but also it may not fulfill all criteria. So if you take some of the key ones, right, that's store of value, unit of account, means of exchange, and fungibility, those are really, there are more. You could come up with 12 or 15 criteria. So as far as the store of value in the long term, it's huge because it is deflationary. No matter, even the volatility never I don't think there was any doubt ever that the deflationary aspect of it would make it valuable down the line. So the store of value is there. And I think that is exactly what Bitcoin is. It's more or less just a store of value right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't fulfill other functions.
Have other cryptocurrencies behaved the same? Have they all kind of behaved the same way? Because I don't watch this space as closely as you do, but like today, for example, Bitcoin's the only one that's up. Every other, actually, there's one more. I think it's like Chainlink or something like that. But out of the main currencies, that's the only one that's up. Every other one is down. And so I'm just wondering, like, are they all highly correlated too, or is there some decoupling there? I should have brought up a chart for that.
So there are two things there. First of all, in the last 2 to 3 years prior to this, many of the weaker projects just died. That really helped the crypto space. All of the clone useless projects, many of them died. So now, but yes, they are very correlated. And Bitcoin does lead the way, but I do think that we're going to get to a place where there's going to be another flush out and there's going to be decoupling.
So I mean, because again, Bloomberg is what I use to look at a lot of these things. And so when I look on Bloomberg, there's somewhere around 13 cryptocurrencies. Some of them I've never heard of except for looking on that list. I mean, one's called Chainlink and Polygon and Litecoin and all these other things. But for next time, maybe I'll prepare a correlation chart of all these, because one of the things that I've noticed, and it was very important to me to see this, and we talked about this early, was the decoupling of Bitcoin from, something like the S&P 500. Because historically, what's happened is you get these sell-offs in the S&P, and you're going to get a sell-off in Bitcoin, and you get a rally. And there's been some more independence the last couple of years in this. And it's gone through phases, depending on how long of a correlation you look at and what the frequency is. You'll see zero and negative during times of kind of like not, it's one of those things that can be diversified when you don't need it to be diversified, when everything's kind of calm.
Yeah, it's like noise. It's not really helpful
noise.
Diversification.
But now with what market's doing, this diversification is actually kind of important. And I don't want to make too much out of one event, but again, this is what
we have
I think.
It's a huge
this is the only one we got. No, but I think it's also the one that I wanted to see. I mean, you don't have bank failure. You don't have banking. It's not a full-blown crisis, but it is a event. It's a real event in the market. And to see Bitcoin react the way it was really important. I mean, let me just pull up these couple of charts for you real quick. I mean, they're really simple. Let me share my screen. This first one is just, this is Bitcoin. Right. So we can kind of see, and this is all that we're talking about. It's a pretty small move. I mean, it's actually a pretty big move. It's a from 20 to almost 20,000. That's a very large move actually. But the scale of it doesn't make it look as large as it is. But what we see is, we see this kind of decreasing and really decreasing now correlation of the Bitcoin with the S&P. This is a rolling correlation from Bloomberg on the S&P. And we can see this has happened before, particularly when Bitcoin has kind of spiked up and there's been a lot of excitement about it. But, again, when there's an event that we want to talk about, this one is important to me because this is acting the way that we want it to in this. And again, it's one event.
But that's like an athlete winning Olympic Games. It's a one event, but it's a win.
It is. It is. And to me, that's kind of something where like I said before, and this one's just the S&P 500. So you can kind of see what happened. The S&P is just sort of marching ahead here when we have low correlations. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me. Even though we have like this little bounce here, the reason for this correlation is still super important in my mind. So that's kind of, one of the things that I did want to show here. But, I think that if we think about, it's just acting the way that we need it to. I mean, when people say, what can I do to prevent something like myself from being in SVB if it happens to my bank? One, there's multiple banks, but the other one I'm starting to really believe is having some in crypto. I mean, this is kind of like the cash under your mattress these days, having, as opposed to taking out $30,000 and sticking it in a under your mattress and hoping that you can get it out if your house burns down, put it into crypto. I mean,
and then lose like 20% a year on it at least.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, of cash too, but you do. The thing that you have to stomach with the crypto is the volatility. I mean, it could go back down, you could buy it at 28, it could be $20,000 next week. But if you're putting it there as a store of value for a future crisis, I mean, it's kind of like gold.
But easier to store, fewer carry costs.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of becoming something that, and as it's used so much, I mean, maybe you can speak to the liquidity because I know that you've actually used more crypto than I have. Talk about how easy it is for those people that don't actually use it.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, in this world of problems with transborder payments, right? They're very, very difficult. Everybody knows that. Crypto is virtually instantaneous. The fees on Bitcoin are very low. So are other cryptos. And there's a lot. I mean, I really think that crypto is becoming a threat. Now, first of all, I'm not one of these people who will constantly say, well, the dollar is about to collapse. You hear these people for decades. The dollar is a Ponzi scheme. It is about to collapse. Okay, technically it is a Ponzi scheme. I have to admit it. It is. Just look at the debt and the interest payments. I'm sorry about my voice today, but it is not. I always tell people a story. You'll love this. So I grew up until age of 15 in Soviet Union, and Soviet Union collapsed in early 1990s. It was like rampant crime, just rampant. And my father told me a story where his friend, he was driving a car from a city to city. I think he was going to sell it. And there were like gangsters on the road, like on a highway. And on a portion of the highway, they would block the highway. They would stop the car, and they're literally standing there with machine guns, and the police were like powerless. And so they stopped the car. What do you think they did? They didn't just like point the gun and say, give me your money. The people with the guns were in the background. The guy they came up to, the driver, was like politely dressed, was nice polite, guy. Well dressed. Right. He had a bucket. He had like an aluminum bucket, but one of those like really old ones with some holes in it. And he said, you want to buy a bucket? So he said, how much? And it was like enormous amount of money, $500 for a bucket. What choice do I have? Okay, yeah. So he bought a bucket. So the people who talk about collapse of the dollar remind me of people who would look at this situation and say, free market will not stand for that. I mean, this business is impossible. The bucket is not worth that much, first of all. Second of all, it's rusty. It has holes in it. There's no customer service. I mean, this is hopeless. There's no way, according to our models, they would sell 0 buckets. And yet they sell buckets day in and day out, right? So US dollar hegemony is not based on free market forces. I mean, that's not how history works, and I'm a student of history. US dollar hegemony is not going to break because China sold some sneakers or some smartphones for yuan. That is just not how it works, right? So I want to establish that I'm not one of these like people who, dollar is about to collapse and so on. However, having established my credibility as not like a panic monger, I will say that Bitcoin after this crisis is a massive, massive threat to fiat currencies. Now, I think that this time around, fiat currencies will win, and I will explain what I mean. This is my forecast, right? But I will show you just a couple of reports from 2 organizations you might know, 2 little organizations. One is going to be, and I could show more, but I'm going to show IMF and Whitehouse, US President's Office. So IMF released this report recently on crypto. There are 10 key points. Look at that. The first point, do not grant crypto assets official currency or legal tender status. Like this sentence just screams, we are afraid. This is an IMF policy paper nonetheless. Okay. Of February 23, right? So this is huge. This is a big, this is basically worldwide financial systems banking opinion on crypto. The first thing says, do not grant crypto assets official currency or legal tender. You can just sense the fear. You can smell the fear. You have to write a 47-page paper to defend that, but really you have no case. All you're saying is don't allow them to do that because they smell the end. There are many other secondary points, but they're also somewhat telling, right? Maintain effectiveness of capital flow management measures. What does it scream of? Fear. We are afraid of these flows. Like the exact thing that I told you is convenient with Bitcoin. They want to stop. This is just like a paper that's supposed to be intellectual, but all it is just filled with fear. Tax treatment. Again, we got to find them. We got to stop them. We got to tax them. There's not a single positive thing in this paper. 47 pages of just, attack, attack, attack. Establish legal certainty. Well, it kind of seemed positive, address legal risks, but we know what that means probably. Again, oversight. So watch them, monitor them, stop them. Joint monitoring. It's like, wait, didn't you just say you want to have oversight? Like, why do you have 2 points saying essentially the same thing? But this is a little bit different. This is prudential oversight, and this is like 3-letter agency oversight.
It's also multi-governmental oversight. Like
of course, it's global. Exactly. They're afraid. They're very afraid. And again, you said global right there. Establish international collaborative arrangements to enhance supervision. There's not a single point here that wins on its merit. It's all, here's a bucket. Buy a bucket. Don't use crypto. Use this bucket. We're not going to even try to convince you. We're not going to polish the bucket. There's just some people with machine guns behind us. That's it, right? That is really all there is to it. It's a perfect metaphor for the story I told you. Like 9 reasons, monitor the, and so on. Again, strengthen global cooperation, blah, blah, blah. So alternative solutions, what do they mean? Alternatives to crypto. Again, we're losing. We need to do something. So that's like 9-point paper, 47 pages of this, right? Now look at the more recent paper by the White House. What do they say? The most important point, cryptocurrencies do not perform functions of money as effectively as sovereign money. Now, it's very easy to argue against this. But again, look, they're hitting the same points. There's 15, it's a 500-page report, 15 pages of the same thing. It's like almost the same person wrote it in a slightly different style. Okay. So it's in essence, they're saying that do not allow it to become, if you summarize these like hundreds of pages, it's like in a few words, do not allow it to become money. They can contain it as a savings vehicle. They can contain it as a store of value. As soon as it becomes a medium of exchange, they're done. That system is done. And it's not just about the dollar, like the whole bank, everything is done. So my forecast is that we haven't seen anything yet. There'll be a much stronger attack, comprehensive attack on cryptocurrencies over the next few months. That is my forecast. And look, read those papers. You can also read the papers from Bank of International Settlements. I could give you more. I just don't want to bore you with, but it was literally like written by the same person, looks like. The goal is to squash the crypto, not squash it completely because they realize that at this point they can't, but actually marginalize it. Now, I think in the long run, the good news is they probably already lost. In the long run, crypto is too pervasive. And right now what's happening is that the global system is not able to deal with it effectively because it's so lucrative. For example, as the IMF was putting this out, as the US was doing the choke point, Hong Kong comes out and says, we're going to relax our rules for crypto. It's like, wait, this is China. Aren't you like the biggest enemy of Bitcoin? No. As soon as they saw that they can benefit from capital flight, because typically US dollar always benefits from capital flight. But as soon as US goes far enough, and I think that US and EU will go very, very far in trying to squash it, there'll be other players that will jump out. And it's not just like Salvador, which made Bitcoin official currency. That's small player. But there'll be bigger players who will try to attract that capital. So my opinion is short term, crypto will be hit. Yes, it passed with flying colors, but it cannot withstand. I mean, like, people will have to buy some of these buckets, and me too. I will have some. But in the longer run, I think that crypto overcomes this and becomes a de facto standard, not displacing physical metals, which I think are also important. Our silver video did very well, and silver is doing pretty well too, but playing a different role. I think that for people who want a physical storage, who want something on hand and want to protect themselves against these legal risks of crypto and technological risks of crypto, i.e. electricity going down, they will have some physical metals, but the crypto will play a huge role. And I think it doesn't become money just yet because they won't allow it, but it will slowly eat away at all these other functions of money until there's only one left, and that's the means of exchange. And then it will just happen naturally, whether it's allowed or not.
So, I mean, we're saying two things here, it sounds like to me, or I'm going to say you're saying two things. So one, it passed with flying colors. It's acting as like, what it was, the idea of Bitcoin is kind of coming true. But on the other hand, it's about to get smacked in the face for a little bit, because governments are coming out.
And that will be, and I rarely make predictions about the future because, as Yogi Berra said, it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. But I will think that this time around, this will be probably the last time, and it will be a buying opportunity of a lifetime as dollar gets devalued. And again, maybe not in the short term. Powell is coming out today. I don't know what he'll say. I actually have a feeling, and here's my he will do 50 basis points. Nobody believes that.
Dude, you're forecasting all over the place.
I know. Today I'm like, I'm off the leash.
I'm going to, I don't know what's happening.
Embarrass myself. I think it's 50 basis points. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. But even if it's 25, there'll be some language, very strong language that we're not done. And of course, this will strengthen the dollar temporarily, but in the longer run, weakening dollar, crypto that drops in price will be a massive buying opportunity, I think.
You know what the good news is?
Massive hedging opportunity too.
Yeah. You know what the good news is?
What is it?
That the Fed hasn't come out yet. And if the Fed comes out and we're wrong, we can just cut this out. We can just edit it. We can just get rid of it. Nobody's ever going to know. Nobody will ever hear what we're saying.
So we will keep our 100% accuracy forecast.
Yes, exactly. We're gonna guarantee ourselves 100% accuracy. All right.
Well, I mean, to be honest, we have been accurate about some things on this channel. We talked about physical silver. That's the video that got, I don't know what it is, 12,000. A lot of use for us because of a young channel.
For us, yeah.
By the way, please subscribe. If you like this stuff, you like financial markets, please subscribe to the channel. Like it, comment it, send it to your friends. But we talked about physical silver. It's doing pretty well. We talked about crypto. It's doing pretty well. We talked about risk of the Fed that people underestimate. And that's doing pretty well if you can use that term.
I agree. I think subscribe if you like what we're saying. keep on watching, and we're going to keep on predicting with 100% success, guaranteed.
Next week, we will have a guest who is an expert tail risk trader in a major hedge fund. You're going to love this. This guy has been right. I've known him since 2010. He was right on the European sovereign debt crisis. He knows Europe very well. It'll be a great show. I don't know if it's next week or week after, but subscribe. We will have some unbelievable guests that you will not get access to normally on YouTube.
Thank you, everyone, for attending another episode of Investing Counterpoint. We look forward to seeing you next time.